Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Ground and Pound podcast, the show where, as always, we're hitting you with them elbows of knowledge. And we're here to break down UFC 318, Dustin the Diamond Poirier taking on Max Blessed Holloway in the main event for the BMF belt, the baddest mother effer. And I am joined by the baddest mother effer here on the Ground and Pound podcast, Carlos. What's happening, Carlos?
Absolutely nothing, brother.
And as always, we're going to kick things off in the prelims, head all the way to the main event, breaking down each individual fight. And if you're enjoying the content here, hit that like and subscribe button as we kick things off in the early prelim opener of Carli Judice taking on Nicolle Caliari. And as always, I'm going to pass this one over to you, Carlos. Who you got in the prelims?
I went with Judice in this one. Caliari, she's built like a little pit bull, So if she can get a hold of Judice, she could probably get a submission, probably have a hard time getting back to her feet, Judice would. But I just think Judice has a lot of movement. She fights long. Sometimes she does advance and she cuts the distance for her opponent, even in a fight like this where you should keep as much distance as possible. She's going to probably give it up because sometimes she's a little over aggressive. But what I feel is like she has improved takedown defense and her striking is very fluid. She has, good kicks, good punches, good knees on the inside too, which is also going to cause a problem for Caliari. And I just don't feel that Caliari has the wrestling to take her down. I know she has some good throws, and I'm not sure if she has a judo background. I did not look into that one, but I do know that she has some good throws. But she has some very basic jiu-jitsu takedowns and foot sweeps, and I just don't think she has the ability to take down someone like Judice.
Yeah, I originally was going to go with Caliari, but I decided to go with Carli Judice, the head kick queen. Obviously, coming off of that first round head kick that she had against Dubin in her last fight. Obviously trains over at Head Kick MMA, which is a very fitting name considering you watch this girl's kicks, front kicks, side kicks, question mark kicks, heel kicks, spinning kicks. She has them all, so very fitting gym for her fight style. Does fight southpaw, has a very nice, quick, sharp left hand. And I do think that the kicks are going to play a big factor here against Caliari. She is mostly a boxer. Like Carlos said, she does look to mix in the takedowns. I think that would be a great weapon for her in this fight. As the shorter girl, 6-inch reach advantage here for Carli Judice. And to me, we've seen with Judice that she does like to get it done with the striking. She can put up a huge amount of volume. I think it was 169 significant strikes in one of her previous fights against Gabrielle Fernandez. So she can put up volume. She can get it done with the KOs in the first round with the kicks. And also as well, I like to throw in Conspiracy Corners coming back this week, that she is from Lafayette, Louisiana. The card does take place in Louisiana. Obviously, the Diamond is from Lafayette, Louisiana. Just some good karma there for her, fighting in her home state, her home area there. And just to kind of talk a little bit about Carli before I basically say that Judice is going to get it done here, that Carli kind of surprised me a little bit. She, like Carla said, she is a little bit of a pit bull, but world karate champion, I don't really see it. They said that on the Contender Series. She doesn't tend to throw a lot of kicks, basically comes out with combos of 1-2s and sort of wings, hooks, a lot of hands, not necessarily a lot of kicks. She does have good entry on her takedown. She does have nice judo. I did see that she does have a little bit of a judo background, but I think if she doesn't mix in the grappling here, she's going to have a pretty long night dodging the kicks of Carli Judice here. I think that she either might get a late finish with some sort of head kick again, or beat her up for a decision. But I like Carli to get it done here, to go 2 in a row. Next up, we have Jackson McVey taking on Brunno Ferreira. I'm going to pass this one to you, Carlos. Who you got in this one?
I went with Brunno Ferreira, but I do want to point out that Jackson McVey was supposed to fight on one of the cards. I can't remember which one. And he was supposed to fight Cedric Dumas. Yeah. And I think that he's got a lot of upside. He's besides this being his debut, he's a tough guy and he's very game. At 6'4", he's very big for the weight class, very tall. He's got a long reach, and he's got some nasty knees in the clinch. He's got good elbows. He throws long punches, but the thing that gets me is he's just kind of weighing on you and trying to give a lot of pressure. He's making you carry his weight. And he does like to do a lot of work in the clinch. He does have some finishes with his strikes. The only thing that I don't like is the fact that even at 6'4", he fights long. He just has his head up in the air. And Ferreira loves to throw that overhand right, and he'll follow it up with left hooks. And I just see that he's probably going to get Ferreira in a position where he can probably clinch him, not see that overhand right coming. But I like this kid, McVey. I think that he could do a lot of good in this weight class, and he's very physical. But right now, for the first test in the UFC, I think Ferreira is going to bully him around the ring. And, it'll be a test to see if he can handle this. But I'm going with Ferreira because it's the safer pick. I think he's got the experience and he's going to take over. But I do like this kid, McVey. What do you think?
Yeah, Jackson McVey, when I looked at the graphic of him, reminds me of like a homeless, drugged up Wish version of Kyler Phillips. So that was the first thing that came to my head, obviously. Second thing that came to my head is 6'4" against 5'10" here against Brunno Ferreira. We've seen in the past with Brunno Ferreira, he struggled against taller opponents. I know that when he fought Nazarton Rozaboyev, he struggled with the range management in that fight. When he fought against Abus Nurmagomedov, again 6'3", he struggled with the range. And those guys striking obviously is a lot higher level than what I think Jackson McVey's is. Like Carlos mentioned, Brunno Ferreira, the Hulk, black belt in judo. He likes to use that, coming off as well his armbar victory over Armen Petrosian. And he does swing powerful hooks, and I do think that's going to be his calling card in this fight against a taller guy that likes to leave his chin up in the air, that can be overly aggressive. But I'm with you, Carlos. I do like McVey. I think you should keep him around. I think that he should really sort of get, a fair chance here, stepping up on short notice. A guy that only ever fights in the first round. All of his 6 pro fights have ended inside the first, whether that be submission or knockout. And I do think that he has great front chokes. I do think that he is very aggressive with the hands, but I think Ferreira here is going to be able to find the kill shot maybe in the second round when McVey kind of gets a little bit overly aggressive. And I do think that McVey is UFC level. Obviously, he's fought low-level guys, but he's flatlined them all in the first round, so he's doing what he's supposed to do. I just think that the Hulk Ferreira is a little bit too much of a step up in competition here. I think if he clinches, I think Ferreira takes him down. I think if they strike, I think eventually Ferreira finds the off switch with an overhand. So I'm with you. I'm going with Ferreira as a little bit of the safer pick here. And next up, we have Ryan Superman Spann taking on Lukasz Brzeski. I was informed by John Anik that it's actually Brzeski instead of Brzeski. But either way, Carlos, who you got in this one?
I went with the struggling Superman Spann. I'm thinking he should get the stoppage against Brzeski. I think he'll be able to probably land like a long right hand on him and just pressure him, like probably sting him and then hurt him and finish the fight. Brzeski, he could be a little, I don't know, for somebody like Spann, he could probably be a little bit tricky because he does know how to fight technically and he can keep himself safe. But sometimes if he gets clipped early, he's done for. So I just feel that Spann's best chances in the beginning of this fight, first round, he's going to catch him, probably the beginning of the second. And I think he's got it. So I'm going Superman with this one.
Yeah, I'm going with Ryan Spann as well, but it's one of these ones where it's like, how can you be confident in Ryan Spann at this point? Obviously his move from 205 up to heavyweight, he came into that fight, he just looked completely disinterested. He just looked like a fat, shallow slob of himself. I do like Spann. Obviously, I'm pretty sure every breakdown I've ever done of Spann, I'm sure Carlos says the same thing, is that he has all the physical attributes, all the talent in the world. He just can't quite put it together. I know in the past he's talked about having anxiety coming into fights and talked about the mental struggle he has when it comes to him fighting in the cage. He has fantastic guillotine. He's got multiple submission victories in the past, a lot by guillotine. He has power in the hands. He doesn't necessarily throw a whole lot of combos, but he is always looking for the finish, always very, very aggressive. And against a guy like Brzeski or Lukasz Brzeski, whatever you want to call it, the guy is just, how this guy's still got a UFC contract, I don't know. He's 1-5 inside the UFC, and he's living proof that MMA math doesn't work. In that 1-5, the one victory that he's had is against Walter Walker, who's now on a 3-fight win streak, all by heel hook, that looks great. He had a loss in there against Mick Parkin. He had another knockout loss against Kennedy Nzechukwu. Like I said, you can never really do the MMA math and figure things out. And to me, Lukasz Brzeski or Dreski, whatever his name is got a lack of durability. The guy just fights behind a jab, very basic kickboxing, leaves his chin up in the air. And I just think that, to be honest, he's just very basic everywhere, doesn't put up a ton of volume, and he doesn't pressure you, which I think is a big factor against Ryan Spann, to get him tired and to kind of give him some adversity that he has to overcome. If he can walk through you, Spann usually beats people he can walk through. If he can't get you out of there, I think he starts to doubt himself. I think he starts to struggle. But a guy like Dreski, I think he'll walk right through him. I'm going with Superman Spann as well. I don't think Dreski's going to be Spann's kryptonite this week. And next up, we have Jimmy Crute taking on Marcin Prachnio. I'm going to pass this one to you, Carlos. Who you got in this one?
I ended up going with Crute. I think Prachnio has heavy leg kicks, decent striking. He throws heavy. He doesn't really know how to set anything up. Crute, on the other hand, yeah, he'll set things up with pressure with his strikes, but and he'll look for an opening. But pretty much Crute is just game, and he's a problem in the first round. And Prachnio, he just doesn't have. To me, I just don't think he has like the technical defensive skills to stop someone like Crute from just bullying him in the first round. What I do think is if he makes it into the second, it's just because he's just gonna absorb some shots and be tough. Prachnio's not a bum, you know what I mean? Like he can hit, and you know he's hurt a lot of people too, but he's also very inconsistent. But kind of going win loss as opposed to Crute, loss, win, loss, win, or something. You know what I mean? So I don't necessarily know who to take. Just like the last fight with Spann and Brzeski, I'm not too confident in this one either. I just went with Crute because I think if this gets to the ground, because I think Crute could probably crack him, get it to the ground. I think he could probably finish him down there, either with ground and pound or sub him, because I think that Crute has the upper hand down there.
Yeah, I wrote in my notes here for this particular fight for Jimmy Crute. We can either do this the easy way or the hard way. For those of you, I think it's Boondocks that's from, but I'm right there with you. I think if Crute gets a takedown, he's going to be pretty much all she wrote here against Prachnio. Prachnio's inability to defend on the ground. He looks like a fish out of water. He just doesn't look like he knows what he's doing. We saw that in his last fight against Modestas Bukauskas, that the second that fight hit the ground in that third round, Bukauskas, transitioned from full guard into into half guard, and was able to finish the arm triangle. And Prachnio was pretty much just giving him the arm triangle, just clueless to what was, basically coming his way. And Bukauskas was able to finish it from the opposite side, which just goes to show that Prachnio basically just didn't know what he was doing, and he was still able to finish it from that position. Prachnio is a little bit of a wild man. He does overextend at times, karate style, very, very flexible kicks, as we saw in that Bukauskas fight with that crazy head kick when the guys were almost chest to chest. But at 37 years old, I question his durability at this point. I do think that the cardio advantage might be on the Prachnio side here, but I just think, to be honest with you, that he's just going to overextend. Jimmy Crute's going to be able to just stay fundamental on the feet and ultimately look for a takedown here. And it's hard to be confident in Crute coming off of like his retirement. He talked about before again about an unhealthy obsession with MMA, and he retired for a while and now he's come back. 2 draws and 3 losses in his last 5. So obviously not necessarily a confident pick here from me, that's for sure. He keeps everything basic on the feet. He's a little bit stiff. He does carry power. He is a big guy, but he likes to get into side control, look for Kimuras. He likes to look for the head and arm choke, and I think that's exactly what he does here. I think his corner gets in his ears, says, let's go for the takedown. He comes out round 1, shoots for the takedown after a little bit of striking, ducks under some shots, and gets that takedown, maybe gets the Kimura or head and arm choke here and finds the first round submission. That's what I'm going with. I think Jimmy Crute is going to look for the sub in the first round here. Get back in the win column, baby. And next up, we have Adam Fugitt taking on Islam Dulatov. And I'm going to kick things off here. And if you guys didn't know, Islam Dulatov is a former Vogue model. I watched a whole little highlight reel tape on how the guy is very, very well off with a high-level modeling career. Thought that was pretty interesting. But the guy just loves to fight. So even though he was making an absolute shitload of money with a high paycheck in the modeling career. He wants to stand and bang. He wants to get in the cage. So much respect to him. He was actually originally from Chechnya, had to move over the same way that Hamzat did because of the war-torn country, moved over to Germany. And ever since he's moved over to Germany as a kid, he's found a love for MMA. Great striking. I really was impressed with his boxing. Absolutely lightning hands. Loves the 1-2. He will throw flurries. He will be very aggressive early in round one, like we saw in his Contender Series debut. And the guy has not been long in fights. If you want to go for a bathroom break, don't pick this one because Dulatov, he will come out aggressive. He is measured in a lot of his other fights, but in the Contender Series, he pretty much put pedal to the metal the second that he got the opportunity. Step in elbow with a nice knockout there. And to me, Adam Fugitt, he's 36 years old. He's a little bit slow. He's a little bit plodding on the feet, throws one shot at a time. And I just think the speed discrepancy here in this matchup is going to be all she wrote. I think Islam comes in. I think he's going to be able to keep this one on the feet, pretty much just have his way in the striking. I think if he does hurt Fugitt and Fugitt decides to shoot for a takedown, Islam Dulatov has shown that he's got great front chokes, nice darces, nice guillotines. I think that obviously the 6'3", that the height, the long limbs are going to be a problem here if he does shoot a sloppy takedown. I'm talking about Fugitt. I think wherever this fight goes, I think that Dumlatov's going to have success. The only way I see this one going pear-shaped for the UFC debutant in Islam is if he gets tired trying to get the finish. I know Carlos and I were talking about that one early before this breakdown started. We were saying, Islam obviously hasn't necessarily been that long in fights. He has been to a decision in his amateur career. But I think he gets this one done. I think he finds the finish early in round one with the hands. Carlos, who you got in this one?
I also took Dulatov, but the only thing that gets me is sometimes the durability of Fugitt. And I don't want to see but I think this could happen, the Abus Magomedov situation where he ends the gas tank in the first round and then later on just becomes a sit and duck and he can't get out of the way of anything and falls victim to Fugitt. I'm not saying Fugitt doesn't deserve to win this, but what I'm saying is I think that if Dulatov can crack him early, he can overwhelm him. But I wouldn't be surprised that if it goes to round two, that, even though he's 26 years old, maybe he doesn't recover as quickly to get Fugitt out of there if he's hurt. Getting tired in a fight, what do they say that fatigue makes cowards of men? When you saw Abus Magomedov just fall apart, I just hate to see this happen in his debut because I do like him technically. I think he's very technically sound. I think on the ground, he's very technical as well. He's very sharp on the feet. He loves to throw in combinations, and combinations with kicks as well, not just punches. But he's exciting to watch. I'd like to see more out of him. Whether he wins or loses this one, you will see it. But I just have that little nugget of doubt in the back of my mind thinking that I just don't want to see him get gassed, and it's a possibility against somebody like Fugitt. I think that's the matchup they gave you, is to see if they could test the gas tank a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. I just wanted to touch a little bit upon, you said about Fugitt's durability. 3 of his 4 losses have come inside the distance. I believe it's 1 by submission, lost 2 by knockout. One of those was Michael Morales, I do believe. And the thing I did notice when I watched tape on Fugitt as well is when he fought Josh Quinlan in his last fight, Josh Quinlan is, nowhere near the speed with the hands. He tends to throw a lot of hooks. Well, Islam Dulatov throws absolute straight shots most of the time. And Josh Quinlan was finding the chin of Fugitt no problem in that fight. And to me, I just don't really see a way that Fugitt just doesn't get his chin absolutely just destroyed in this one. But I'm right there with you. Until you see Islam actually fight a higher level guy and get tested, it's hard to say. UFC debuts can be tricky, especially in front of a big crowd. But I feel confident in Dulatov here to get it done. And next up, we have Robert Valentin taking on Ateba Gautier. And I'm going to pass this one to you, Carlos. Who you got in this one?
I took Gautier, and the reason I did, he's just look at him. The guy's a tank. He's big. He's powerful. He's going to land the shots. He's going to rip those kicks. And the thing is even grappling wise, like he's able to control guys on the ground as well and get some ground and pound, even get back to the feet and strike. He doesn't really look too fatigued. And just like the last fight I was saying, Valentin here, he's kind of the same thing. He's the type of guy that you give the step up, and he's going to test the gas tank. He's going to go to the body. He's going to throw like short shots on the inside. He's going to throw long shots from the outside. He's going to try to push you up against the cage and take you down. And while you're down there, he's going to try to work some ground and pound, some elbows, some rips to the body, knees. Those are the things that are going to try to fatigue you and wear on you. He's going to put his weight on you. And as long as Gautier, like so far from what I've seen from him, they're not the level of Valentin, but if he can stay composed, I have no problem picking him in this one. But yet again, this is another one to test the gas tank.
Yeah, I'm going with Gautier as well. 81-inch reach. The guy's, like Carlos said, is an absolute physical specimen. It really surprised me when I was doing the graphics that he's only 23 years old. I don't know. We might have to test that. It sounds like a Jose Aldo birth certificate there. I don't know what's going on with that, but guy's an absolute freak. Trains at Manchester top team. Obviously, a lot of high-level guys over there. That's pretty much becoming like the American top team, but the UK version. They've got a lot of the higher-level guys over there. He did try out for the Olympic Cameroon boxing Olympic team, turned that down and to pursue a career in MMA. Does have very high level boxing and obviously carries a lot of power in the hands. The guy is an absolute physical specimen, but what really impressed me in his UFC debut when he got that first round knockout on Medina with that knee up the middle is how composed he stayed. Even the commentary team was saying in that fight, when you carry all that power, it's very easy just to come in like a wild man and, just want to show off your power. He stayed very, very fundamental, fought behind the jab, looked for the 1-2 through his combination. And he didn't necessarily come out like a berserker. He looked, like a more, what's the word I'm looking for? More experienced fighter than a guy that's only had 8 professional fights. And when you talk about Robert Valentin, obviously, finalist on the Ultimate Fighter, lost to Ryan Loder. 0-2 currently in the UFC, but he did fight 2 wrestlers. So be interested to see how he does here against a powerhouse striker in Gautier. I do think that he has nice step-in elbows, Robert Valentin. Obviously a pretty big guy, even at 185. I do think he cuts a lot of weight. He's fairly stocky in terms of his build, and I do think that he could mix in some grappling here, which could, like Carlos said, test the gas tank here of Gautier. I do think that if this fight hits the mat, I think that Valentin could definitely take his back. He showed slick ability to be able to reverse position on Ryan Loder and take his back. I wouldn't be surprised if later on in this fight, if it does go there, he can do that to Gautier if he does get him down and get him tired. But I'm going to say that Gautier gets him done in the first round with the power, with the hands, and ultimately finds his second knockout here inside the UFC. And next up, we have Francisco Prado taking on Nikolay Veretennikov. That's a mouthful. But Carlos, who you got in this one?
Okay, I went with Prado. I like Prado. He's a little shorter for the weight class. And, against Matthews, he looked very small. So against Veretennikov, I don't think it's going to look any different. I think he's just a little thick and a little short. But I think Veretennikov's doesn't really have a lot of resistance to takedowns. And I think Prado could find some success if he goes for some takedowns early in this fight. The thing is also Veretennikov doesn't have a lot of volume, whereas Prado is always kind of pressuring in your face and kind of throwing combinations and kicking your lead leg. So how is Veretennikov going to deal with that? I don't know. And I think he's going to deal with that the way he's dealt with everything else, probably catching the loss. But the problem is he's also got quite a reach advantage. And if he can just stay busy in the eyes of the judges, throwing a jab, reaching it out there, throwing some kicks, keeping Prado at distance, that could probably sway them towards the end of the fight if he doesn't get hurt, or controlled on the ground significantly. And that's where I have my doubts in this, but I'm still going to go with Prado in this. So I think he can get that done. And I think he should definitely try to take this to the ground early.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think if he mixes in the grappling, I think this is another easy way or hard way fight. I think if he stands and bangs, it could be problematic for him. He might get caught. But I think if he does mix in the grappling, I'm right there with you. I think it could be an easy night, as Vanderford showed in their last fight against Nikolay. But Prado, 23 years old, obviously still very, very young. All of his wins coming inside the distance, 6 by knockout, 6 by KO. He does train over at American Top Team. And one of the things I wrote in my notes is that, since his move over to American Top Team since his last fight, you got to think like a young guy like that over at that kind of gym could make severe improvements, from fight to fight. He could come in much better from fight to fight, just being at that gym and training with such high-level guys. Taekwondo black belt, throws a lot of looping shots. He does tend to be a little bit... what's the word I'm looking for? When he's out at range, he'll throw one shot. He won't throw combinations. But when he's trading in the pocket, he'll rip combinations depending on sort of where he's at in terms of range. He has a nice calf kick, and he will mix in the grappling, but he does tend to, I think he gets a little bit suckered into, kind of being in firefights. He's still young. He hasn't necessarily taken a whole lot of damage yet in his career. I think that he likes to stand and bang. I think in this one, like Carlos said, if he could just mix in the grappling, I think that would be his best path to victory. And also losses to Jake Matthews and Daniel Zellhuber aren't bad losses, especially for a 23-year-old. Jake Matthews has looked fantastic getting a win on Saturday. Daniel Zellhuber is also a guy that's, 15-2, that's, fighting on the main card here. And to me, Nikolay, 35 years old, trains at King's MMA. The guy is just kind of slow, plodding, terrible takedown defense, very low volume. I think to me, this should be one-way traffic for Prado. I think he should get it done. I think he could always get caught on the feet by the bigger, taller, longer guy here in Nicolau, but ultimately I think Prado should get it done here against the old veteran here, the 35-year-old Nicolau. And next up, we have Brandon Allen taking on Marvin Vettori. Carlos, who you got in this one?
I am taking Vettori in this one. I think Vettori can kind of bully Allen wherever the fight takes place. I also think Vettori can dictate wherever the fight takes place. I think on the feet, I think Brendan Allen is a little bit more, I guess we could say, athletic, a little bit more skilled on the feet. But Vettori is very solid in his basics. He's got good basic defense. Although he does absorb punches, he shows off that chin of his. He does tend to block a lot of punches as well and a lot of kicks. The other thing that he tends to do is if someone's trying to take him down, you never really see him get taken down to the ground at all. And if he does, if he has the wrestling to get back up, whether Brendan Allen's winning on the feet or not, he's going to end up on the ground at some point. And I think that's going to be a mistake against Vettori. I think he's just a bigger, stronger grappler. And I think he'll be able to control him on the ground and just punish him off of, while Allen's on his back, because that's preferably where he would like to be in that scenario. Even if Allen ends up on top, I think Vettori's probably going to be able to sweep, get to the top. And knowing Vettori, he's going to want to get back to the feet. I just think that it's a better match if he can stay on the ground and just stay on top and get some ground and pound in on Allen. I've never really seen Vettori look for submission finishes before. He's not really trying to. I've never really seen him take the fight to the ground and try to keep it there, but unless it was against Adesanya. But other than that, I mean, he's always coming forward. He's got that chin, and he's got good defense, good skill. 1-2, pressures you, walks you down. I'm going to take Vettori.
Yeah, I already told Carlos who I'm going with this one because we're going with Marvin Vettori, the dog of the week, the Italian dog of the week, the greyhound, the pit bull, whatever you want to call him, man. This guy is an absolute dog. Obviously, losing in his last fight to Roman Dolidze, that fight was very, very close, but he was coming off of a long layoff due to a shoulder injury. He had to have surgery on that shoulder. Obviously, the first time stepping back in the octagon since then. They talked a little bit about him moving over to American Top Team since his last fight, which I really like that gym move. I think that a guy as physically gifted as Vettori with that granite chin and the skill set that he's had, I think that's a great move for him to go and fight and train over there. He's a southpaw. He likes to blast kicks, great takedown defense. And when you look up granite chin in the dictionary, there's literally a picture of Marvin Vettori screaming at you in that part of the dictionary. But he is very, very high volume. He will mix in wrestling as well. I don't necessarily think he's the most athletic guy, like Carlos said, but I think what he lacks in athleticism, he makes up for in sort of ferociousness. He is a very emotional guy. He's talked a lot about that in the past, that he uses that emotion to good effect inside the cage. And he also stays fundamental. The jab and the low kicks are great weapons for him. When his opponent is kind of just standing in front of him, he'll just make sure he's always scoring, jab, low kick. That's pretty much how he beat Roman Dolidze the first time when they fought, just out-voluming him on the outside. And also as well, when you really look at his losses inside the UFC, Prime Izzy, that's his loss. Robert Whittaker, the arguably the second guy in middleweight under Izzy, and Roman Dolidze in his recent loss. Other than that, he's been pretty much he's been beating all the other guys. And to me, this fight when I watched an interview, I don't necessarily like to look too much into stories and, kind of how people feel coming into fights. But I watched an interview recently that Marvin Vettori said that he lost his little brother in this training camp, and that he's obviously going to dedicate this fight here against Brandon Allen to his little brother. And a guy that's that emotional and that aggressive, I think that's going to play him and serve him well for extra added motivation. I know Brandon Allen and him have beef. They had a brawl backstage in a PFL event once, and they really don't like each other. I think that's going to be everything Marvin needs here to beat a guy like Brandon Allen. And just to touch very briefly on Brandon Allen, back-to-back losses now against Fluffy Hernandez. He lost to Imavov as well, where he was taken down and controlled in both of those fights. I do think Vettori could mix in the wrestling against him. He can be taken down and held down. Even in the Chris Curtis fight, Carlos and I were saying, Curtis was able to pressure him and back him up. Vettori is a much, much bigger guy. I think that he could do something very, very similar. And when you look at his wins, his recent wins, he had a split decision win over Chris Curtis, who's an undersized middleweight. He had Paul Craig and Munoz. Munoz has been knocked out and beaten pretty much in every single fight. They're not creditable wins that make you kind of stand out and think, wow, he should be a 2-1 favorite here against a guy like Marvin Vettori. He's pretty much a BJJ nerd, not necessarily got the wrestling to get fights to the ground. He lacks power to get the respect of a guy like Vettori. Long story short, I'm taking Vettori here. Dog of the week. Easy money. How is he a 2-1 underdog? I think he gets it done. The Italian dream for dog of the week. And next up, we have Kyler Phillips taking on Vinicius Oliveira. Carlos, who you got in this one?
I went with Oliveira. Oliveira's hot right now. He's got a lot of confidence. He's big. He's tough. He's very big for the weight class. He's strong. He's powerful. Looking to punish his opponents. Actually, it looks like sometimes he's looking to punish them more than winning. At times, when his opponents are trying to create distance, he doesn't really rush them. He just walks them down, and as they come in, I don't know if he's timing them. I don't know what, but he'll just rip a kick or rip a punch or something. He just has kind of a punishing style. Makes you think twice before you come towards him. Whereas Phillips kind of depends on a lot of movement, and that could be a problem for Oliveira at first. The way I think he should be able to negate this problem is every time Phillips tends to move or come in, he should probably try to rip the lead leg. Now, it's easier said than done because Phillips is, that's what he does. He's a mover. He's on his toes, ball to feet, and he's going back and forth, in and out. The thing that I could see is Oliveira timing him on the way in, ripping his lead leg. Obviously, he'll be off balance, or possibly just ripping a straight shot down the middle, catching Kyler on the way in. I feel that this is going to go to decision just because I think the movement of Phillips is going to be kind of an issue for him. But I think Oliveira, just from the aggression, will get this done.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Vinicius Oliveira. The guy's been very impressive since joining the UFC, and I'm right there with you with that low calf kick in this fight. I agree. I think Kyler Phillips does like to bounce around on the outside. We saw that in the Rob Font fight, which was a great call. Carlos Font was a big underdog in that fight. He called that one to a T. Rob's pressure in his boxing got it done against Phillips, who wanted to bounce around on the outside. He was light on his feet. We saw Phillips likes to mix in takedowns, especially early in that fight. He thought that was a hole in Rob Font's game that he'd seen in the past, but he can't keep that up, and that's a big thing in Phillips fights, as you tend to see, because he is always dancing around on the outside, he's always moving backwards, he tends to get tired. So if he does mix in grappling, he gets even more tired, and I do think that he lacks a little bit of power and a little bit of pop in his punches to be able to get the respect of guys that obviously want to pressure him. And when you look at Vinicius, that's exactly how he fights. He's always pressuring, he's always stalking on the feet, and pretty much guys get tired from that. If you go back and look at his last fight against Said Nurmagomedov, he's a flashy striker that bounces around on the outside, that throws great kicks and spinning kicks, and I just think, to be honest with you, Vinicius can do a very similar game plan in that fight. Mix in some of the wrestling, get takedowns, really smash the lead calf of Phillips to slow him down and slow the movement down. The guy's obviously 29 years old and has had 25 professional fights. He's got a lot of experience, 10 more fights than Phillips. I think he comes in here with a great game plan. His aggressive Muay Thai style is going to be all it takes here to beat a guy like Phillips. And if he wants to mix in the wrestling, I think he can. I like Oliveira in this one. I think the odds are relatively close. I think he's like minus 170. I think Oliveira should get it done here. I think he should be a bigger favorite against a guy like Phillips, but I think he gets it done this week. And next up, I think this one kicks off the main card. So if you're enjoying the content here, hit that like and subscribe button as we break down the UFC veteran Michael Johnson taking on Daniel Zellhuber. And I'm going to pass this one to you, Carlos. Who you got in this one?
I went with Zellhuber in this one. The inconsistency of Johnson makes me obviously take Zellhuber after the amazing fight he had against Ribovics. This will be his first one back in the cage, and I think Johnson. I think he catches Johnson with a straight on the way in at some point. Johnson, at the same point, Johnson can catch him too. He's got a big shot, and he can get Zellhuber to the ground. The thing is you don't know how sharp he's going to be when he comes in. Whereas you know that Zellhuber's young, he's hungry, and he's ready to go. And he's a tough kid. He could take a shot, he can give a shot. And I just think that I didn't mind seeing Michael Johnson obviously win and people praising him and, getting his career, trying to get it back on track. But at 39 years old, going up against a 26-year-old guy, I really don't see that happening. And his chin being beat on for so many years, so many fights, I can't see it being any other way. So I'm going to go with Zellhuber.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. There's obviously been question marks around Johnson's durability at this point in his career. Obviously a 30-fight veteran inside the UFC, 15 wins, 15 losses in that span. But like Carlos said, 39 years old, and the durability issues, I think it's going to give Zellhuber all the openings he needs in order to find a finish and bounce back from that Ribovics loss at UFC Sphere. I do think that Johnson can mix in takedowns, but I don't think he'll get him against Zellhuber. His boxing-heavy approach is going to leave him kind of out at range for Zellhuber to pick and prod at with his kicks. I think the straights of Zellhuber are going to be a problem with the reach advantage as well. And I just think, to be honest with you, that this is just a great matchup for Zellhuber. He's faster, he's longer, he's the more credentialed kickboxer, and he's got more weapons. So pretty simple breakdown for me here is I think Zellhuber finds the chin of Johnson and puts him out and gets back in the win column. For that simple. And next up, we have Dan 50K Ige taking on Patricio Pitbull, the legend over in Bellator, moving over to the UFC. Carlos, you going with the legend or are you going with 50K to get it done?
I'm going to have to go with 50K Ige. Ige, I gotta say, is a slight favorite for me in this fight. Both are tough guys. Ige's kind of measured. He's fights behind the jab. He's got good wrestling defense, keeps his distance. He's kind of measures his distance off his jab in the beginning of the fight. And then he'll start to unload from there. He'll know that I could touch you with this. I could touch you with this. So now I'm going to throw a couple more things. And he'll open up with elbows, knees, kicks. He'll throw everything at you. Pitbull, I know that it should be a better matchup than Yair Rodriguez because that guy's just a whirlwind of offense. A leg can come out of nowhere from that guy, an elbow, a punch, anything. But Ige is just as dangerous, I think, because Yair is just throwing things out there and nothing's really coming to hurt you. It's just you got to be on your P's and Q's with him. But with Ige, he's trying to put you out. And I just think that, I guess he's got a little bit of a reach advantage. They got about the same height advantage. And I know that Patricio Pitbull's a tough guy. We've seen him fight plenty of times, but Ige is a very tough guy as well. And he's just slightly younger, more closer to the prime. I think he just puts a pace on him and gets Pitbull out of there.
Yeah, this is an interesting fight for me. I do think that Pitbull could definitely pull off the upset. Obviously, Pitbull struggling in his UFC debut with the length and the reach of Yair Rodriguez, that kind of crazy whirlwind style that Carlos talked about. I think caught him off guard here in the big moment. But it's hard to trust a guy like Pitbull at 38, especially at a lower weight class. A lot of the older guys tend to struggle at lower weight classes, in the UFC especially. I do think that Pitbull can be a little bit low volume, but one thing I do think he'll have in this particular matchup is the boxing heavy style of Ige. I think Pitbull can really slam and go at the low calf kick of Dan Ige in this fight. I do think that that's probably going to be the only real path to victory is just chew up the legs, dance around on the outside. and really maybe even mix in takedowns if he can. But I think ultimately that's not going to be enough here. I think Ige's boxing heavy approach. I think he has much more power in the hands. I think he does a good job of disguising the right hand when he brings it over the top with the jab. He just throws something out there just to kind of get you thinking about it, and then really just lands that right hand. That's obviously why they call him 50K Ige, with that one punch right hand knockout that he had against Gavin Tucker, I believe it was, that he's kind of got on his highlight reel tape. But him, obviously, Dan Ige coming off of a KO win against Sean Woodson that had a little bit of controversy with the stoppage. But there's no denying the power in Ige's hands. Obviously, like Carlos mentioned, that the reach advantage that he does have with both guys being pretty similar in height. I think that that's going to be enough. I don't think the calf kick's going to be enough to deter Ige. I think he gets it done with his boxing here and having the faster hands. And next up, we have Kevin Trailblazer Holland, Big Mouth, taking on Daniel Rodriguez. I'm going to pass this one to you, Carlos. Who you got in this one?
I ended up going with Holland, and I know that's kind of a coin toss because you don't know which Holland is coming. But as of late, I think Holland's actually trying to make a serious run. And against Rodriguez, who's a very technical fighter in terms of boxing and has decent takedown defense, I feel like the length of Holland is going to be an issue. Now, the problem is I think Holland can probably, hurt Rodriguez on the feet, but technically he does have decent head movement and he doesn't keep his head in one spot. So Holland's going to have to aim for something else, probably go to the body, throw in combination, rip the leg. But the issue is I think he should probably think of, if I get him hurt, keep him on the ground. I don't see Kevin Holland just being able to take someone down, but I could see him distracting them with some strikes to being able to get him to the ground. And I think that's what he needs to do to get this fight over with. I know he wants to be excited and I know he wants the knockout, and he can get the knockout over Rodriguez. And Rodriguez is a tough kid, but I do think I guess the easier path to victory for Holland would be try to get this to the ground and use some of that jiu-jitsu that you pulled off in your last fight.
Yeah, I'm going with Kevin Holland. I feel fairly confident, which is crazy to say in a Kevin Holland fight, but I do think here at welterweight, I think he takes his career much more seriously. He seemed more dialed in. He seems like he can have success defending takedowns at this division, and he's looked good since doing it. Obviously, his win over Gunnar Nelson, defending the takedowns, showing off that great, is it Travis Luda? BJJ that he's got. Obviously, we know about Kevin's reach advantage, 81-inch reach, the great striking that he's got. Always exciting, always entertaining, UFC favorite. And I just think here with Daniel Rodriguez that if this plays out with the boxing, with the striking, I think Kevin's reach and the kicks are going to cause Rodriguez a lot of problems. I agree with Carlos as well. If this fight does somehow end up on the ground, I really like Kevin to be able to find the submission here against Rodriguez. I just think it's one of those fights where I think wherever this fight plays out, Kevin Holland should have the advantage. It just depends on if Kevin Holland shows up in this fight. If the Kevin Holland that's shown up in the last two fights shows up in this fight, he should win by stoppage, whether that be submission or by knockout. I do think Daniel Rodriguez is good. He doesn't throw a ton of kicks. He's mostly just boxing. He's going to have a lot of difficulty getting on the inside here against a guy with the reach of Kevin Holland. But I think that Kevin Holland here probably just pieces him up with the hands. And once Rodriguez finds that he's getting pieced up, he might shoot him for a takedown, and Kevin Holland finds a submission with the long reach that he's got. And either way, I see Kevin Holland getting his hand raised here, providing that he shows up and doesn't go back to his old crazy ways. But I feel pretty confident that Kevin's going to make a run here at welterweight. And next up, we have the co-main event for UFC 318 in New Orleans. We have Roman Kopylov taking on Paulo Costa. And I'm going to pass this one to you, Carlos. Who you got in this one?
Well, I went with Kopylov. Costa has been struggling since his title fight. His only win has been against Luke Rockhold, which, Luke is a good name, but he's been diminished for a while now. And I think ever since being hurt against Adesanya, I think Costa's just kind of afraid to step in because I think he's worried about getting tagged and stopped. But I also think that, there comes a point where you just kind of got to take a chance. If you're built like a Titan, you got to try to fight like one. And sometimes we all forget the reason why we get into fighting, and you have fun swinging and you have fun taking shots, and that Yoel Romero fight is a prime example of it. Like, he took shots from Romero, he gave shots to Romero. It was a great fight, and ever since then you expect big things from him. But Kopylov has been pretty consistent. He's dangerous. That Sambo background, he could stuff takedowns. So Costa's going to have an issue if he's trying to get this to the ground. He has good technical striking, does hold a low guard against Costa. I don't think that's going to be a problem because he doesn't really step in enough to do any damage with any of his strikes, and most of his heavier strikes are his kicks from the outside. So not really an issue for Kopylov, but I feel that he's just going to put the pace on Costa and probably squeak out the decision. Although Costa's not trying to finish anybody anymore, he's trying to stay safe in the fight, and he doesn't want to get stopped. And he can take a shot. It's just mentally he doesn't think he can. So this will go to decision. I'm going with Kopylov. And when I see somebody like Costa that's not fighting the way he should be, it's kind of sad to watch because he's just a talent and he's letting it dwindle away.
Yeah, me and you see this one exactly the same. I see this one as pretty much just going to be a back and forth technical kickboxing affair. If anybody's going to mix in takedowns, it's going to be Costa, going for a sloppy one, or it's going to be Kopylov doing it in order to maybe squeak out rounds or wear on the gas tank of a bigly built guy like Costa. To me, one of the things that that really stood out to me when I watched tape on both of these guys is Kopylov will throw in combinations. So he'll end stuff with, throw a kick, he'll maybe throw a 1-2, whatever the case may be, but he's throwing multiple shots at a time. He switches stances, he gives people different looks. Whereas when you look at Costa, he throws one big shot. He'll blast a body kick and then he just stands there and kind of looks at you. And it's like Carlos said, is that he just really just stays safe. And I just think that the problem with that in this fight is if Kopylov wants to stand and just trade with him for 3 straight rounds, just kind of going back and forth, tit for tat, Kopilov's going to get ahead on the numbers. He's going to get ahead on the striking. If he wants to mix in grappling, he can. So he has much more of an arsenal of tools that he wants to or can use here against a guy like Costa. I just think, to be honest with you, if the Costa that shows up, the eraser, the guy that we saw, like Carlos mentioned, against what's his name? Who's the Cuban guy you just mentioned? I've forgotten his name.
Yoel Romero.
Yoel Romero, yeah. If that guy shows up, then this could be an absolute bomb burner. But until we see that Costa show up again, the one that just dances around on the outside and blasts kicks and misses weight, and he's funnier on social media than he is, or takes his social media stance a little bit more seriously than his UFC career at this point. I think Kopylov gets it done unless we see a different Costa show up. I think the volume here, I think that the overall skill set of a guy like Kopylov can get this done with his kickboxing. And I'm right there with you. I think it's probably a unanimous decision for Kopylov. And that brings us all the way to the main event for UFC 318. Dustin the Diamond Poirier. Is it going to be his retirement fight? He seems to think so. He's called out Max Blessed Holloway in the main event for the BMF belt. And Carlos is going to let you know who he has in the main event for UFC 318.
I'm going with Poirier. I love the way Max looks at 155 against Gaethje. This Max at 155, not the one that fought Poirier the first time. You could see that he put on a lot of mass. You could see that he has his speed, he has his volume, and that's going to pose a lot of problems for Poirier. What Poirier did in his second fight was he hurt Max often, and he hurt him early, and he hurt him often. And what that meaning is he let him feel the power, and he kept touching him throughout the fight, keeping Max a little hesitant when stepping forward, which is fine. I think that Max coming off that knockout with Topuria, I don't know how much that plays in his mind, and I don't think it's going to play too much, but is he going to be able to absorb the damage that he usually does, even against like Poirier, someone that hits at that level too? Poirier is a solid shot, and I just think that the way he buckled Holloway in that last fight, I think he can do the same thing again. It's not to say that Holloway can't put the pressure on him, but Poirier's also got good cardio as well. I also would like to see Poirier, this has nothing to do with my pick here, but I also would like to see him go out on a high note because, great career. If it was Max's last fight, I would love to see him get the high note as well. Great career, great fights, great memories. I would love to see it. So I'm going with Poirier. I think that think he's got everything it takes to do it. I think he's, even though he's saying he's retiring, I think he's one of those guys that even if he stayed, he'd still be hungry. I think he's hungry enough to get this done.
Yeah, I mean this main event's an absolute fucking banger. You couldn't really ask for two better guys to throw down. Obviously, Dustin getting the better of Max earlier on in their career in the first two fights, and it's a shame Dustin wants to hang things up. And I do think that obviously Max is going to be very game and a great opponent for him here in this main event. I think regardless of belt, I think both of these guys are definitely two of the baddest motherfuckers that there are. There's no doubt about that. I could sit here and give you a very detailed breakdown about how, Poirier has great boxing. He doesn't throw a lot of straight shots. He throws in combination. He throws the low kick. Max has great volume. Obviously, he's going to want revenge since coming back after that Poirier loss. I could sit here and talk X's and O's all day, but one of the things that, to me, is the reason I'm going to pick Max Holloway in this one is the revenge angle. And it comes down to kind of the betting side of things here is that when you get a guy, to me, in MMA that's an older guy that says, hey, I'm going to retire after this fight. This is going to be my last fight. Even though I think Dustin's training hard, even though I think that he's a dog, even though I think this is going to be a great back and forth fight, I just think it's kind of in the back of his mind that he's already done. So for me, that automatically puts me on Max because he in his mind, both guys have got the skills to beat either guy. Max is going to be hungrier coming off of that loss against Topuria. He's going to want to keep the BMF belt. He's still obviously the younger guy that's still got a few more years to give inside the UFC. And to me, if your head is out the door and you're saying things like, I'm thinking about retirement, I just look at it from that perspective of you win or lose, he knows what's going to happen after this fight. Do I think Poirier could come back if they give him the right matchup? Absolutely. He's that kind of guy. I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't, a year down the line, they give him a fight that interests him. Sure, he could. But right now he's talking about retirement, so that puts me on Max Holloway. I think both guys, could definitely win with the boxing. Poirier, I give the edge and power. I give Max the footwork, the speed, and the sort of the volume game advantage here. I think if anybody mixes in grappling, it's probably Poirier. But I just think to me that Max, coming off of that loss, it could play a factor, like Carlos said, with that Topuria knockout. At 155, he has looked good. He did give one competitive round to Topuria, which no one else has been able to do. Maybe that gives him some sort of psychological edge here. But I'm just going to go with Max. I think that he's going to want revenge after Poirier beating him in the previous two matchups that they've had here. I think both guys are great. I think this is a great main event. And if you're enjoying the content, hit that like and subscribe button as I let you know what videos are coming here on the channel. We've got the Dog of the Week full highlight reel tape later on coming out this week for Marvin Vettori. There'll be a highlight reel tape and a full explanation as to why I want Marvin Vettori, why I like Marvin Vettori, and even Carlos likes Marvin Vettori this week. And also we have PFL Cape Town, PFL Africa is going to be live on the channel coming up shortly. Full card breakdown. Carlos and I are going to be doing that video for you shortly, along with and also Make MMA Great Again video. That's another video that's going to be coming out on the channel talking about the White House card. And before we wrap things up, Carlos, is there anything that you want to say to the people?
Well, guys, if you like the content, please like and subscribe, and see you on the next one.
Yep. As always, people, we'll catch you in the next one. Hit that like and subscribe button. Peace.
Peace.